The Love and Leary podcast is where nursing leadership, innovation, and real talk come together. Hosted by nurse leaders Marion Leary
and Rebecca Love.
The show dives into the issues that matter most to today's nursing community.
Each episode features candid conversations, expert insights, and bold perspectives on healthcare, leadership, advocacy, and the future of nursing. Whether you're a clinical nurse, nurse leader, or another healthcare changemaker, Love and Leary offers thoughtful dialogue and practical takeaways to inform, inspire, and empower nurses at every stage of our careers.
Hello, Rebecca.
Hello, Marion. Good to be back.
Right? Episode 7 of the Love and Leary podcast. We're like moving right along.
Hey, you know what? Some good things just have to keep happening, right? So
It's true. So true. So I'm excited. What are we talking about today?
So you know what? We decided to dive into the topics around hackathons. Although we've talked about them broadly in the past, I think a lot of people still have questions on them. For you and I think we feel like sometimes maybe it's been a little overplayed. But the truth is I think hackathons had a profound impact both on your life and my life in changing the way in which we decided to take action around the profession of nursing. So today, it's all about hackathons and events that go around them, design thinking, things along those topics.
Well, that's exciting. And the reason we're doing this is because the Nursing Beat is going to be the media partner for the Think Conference, which is taking place June 7th through 9th in Boston. And that's being put on by SUNCL, which is the Society of Nurse Scientists, Innovators, Entrepreneurs, and Leaders. So I'm going to scroll that across the screen. If anybody's not sure what the Think Conference is, doesn't know about SUNCL, highly recommend checking that out on the SUNCL website, which is suncl.org.
Yes. And I think just to give you guys an idea, you know, the whole idea around hackathons had actually been well established, well outside of nursing over a decade ago. Google, Microsoft, big organizations like MIT ran hackathons to basically take on problems that their front line was facing that perhaps had never hit the executive suite and wanted to understand what were the problems that could happen that you could potentially solve over the course of a weekend if you put really smart people together in a space and tackled problems.
Yeah, and it really hits on the human-centered design aspect of, going to the people who are experiencing the problem and working co-collaboratively with them to define the problem and create the solution. And that's really what hackathons are in such a condensed way, right? Generally, hackathons start on like a Friday evening and run through a Sunday afternoon. And within that time, you are working through the design process to create a solution to a problem that for nurse hackathons, and the one that we're talking about, frontline nurses have identified as the problem they want to solve for. And to Rebecca's point, it is a mix of really experienced, diverse individuals who come together to help solve that problem. So not just nurses, but engineers, designers, entrepreneurs, other healthcare providers, all coming together for a weekend to solve a problem. It's a really inspiring and fun time.
And honestly, that's how Marion and I met, was when we came together we've talked about it on a past podcast, but really it was an event that we went to in 2016 that we had orchestrated to have the first nurse hackathon in the United States. And really from there, it sort of sparked this movement around getting nurses at the front line of where these innovation events were taking place so that if nurses could actually share the problems they were having, perhaps we could actually fix some of the problems that we experience at the bedside. And although the studies aren't completely clear, we know nurses in every single shift still do a massive amount of workarounds to try to make sure that the environments that they work in work better for them. And I think what we've seen in the course of the last decade, especially with the adoption of technology, Marion and I talk a lot about this, didn't actually improve the environments that nurses are working in. It actually gave them a lot more to do, more tasks as opposed to more tools to actually do their job better. And a lot of the technology actually didn't work really well for them to actually do their job better. Hackathons become that place where nurses can come forward and say, hey, in a safe environment, I can innovate here to solve these problems. Because the truth is that we've been told long time as nurses, don't innovate on the front lines, because if you do, you can harm and kill patients. So hackathons create that safe space for those kind of events to take place.
And, we've done some research on this, right? And a group of us who run the hackathons did a survey study with participants from previous Nurse Hack for Health events and found that it does increase confidence when starting a new venture or project. I'll also say my dissertation was looking at how to quantify a nurse's innovativeness. And what we found was that the more innovation events nurses attend, so hackathons, human-centered design, design thinking workshops, the more of those that are offered to them and the more exposure they have to all those things increases a nurse's innovativeness, which is their willingness and ability to be innovative. So there's a lot of data here showing that exposure to offerings of and attendance at these types of events really does increase a nurse's ability to be innovative, which is why I think for me, especially, and I'm sure for you too, why we are always pushing things like hackathons, accelerators, human-centered design and design thinking, workshops and lectures. You have to be exposed to these things to be able to fully understand their value and their power, and then how to use them in the clinical setting or wherever you work as a nurse.
Absolutely. And, there's a great quote from the founder of Microsoft, which he said, innovation is what distinguishes leaders from followers, right? So the more nurses who have experience in innovation, the better of a leader they actually become, because it actually helps them push forward new ideas, claim those actions to take action, and solve the problems that have been facing it and plaguing this profession. And I think you and I both know this, and I often say this in talks that I give around the country is, the truth is many health systems spend millions of dollars with consultants to come in and identify the problems that they think are plaguing their system. And I think you and I feel very strongly that a hackathon is one of the best ways to identify those problems, but also empower your frontline staff to identify the problems, but come up with solutions that could work for them. And that, I think, is something that if we could get this measurement of change and change agency to start happening in healthcare systems to say, hey, you know what, try a hackathon, see what the front line tells you, see what solutions they come up with. And, I know we hope to do a future session actually alongside with Hiam Nadel, who as we know, is the director for the Center of Innovations at Mass General Hospital, running hackathons within our own one, currently the president of Sanciel as well. They have seen tremendous impact by running these and actually taking care of problems on the front line.
Yeah. And, I'll just say that I think hackathons are a really helpful and powerful thing, from student nurses all the way up through executive nurse leaders. And we've been running hackathons for all of those demographics, right? Like getting more nursing students involved at the Nurse Hack for Health events that we run, but also specifically being thoughtful about including hackathons at conferences like AONL, where we can reach nurse leaders who can then, again, experience the power of a hackathon. Because I think, like innovation, hackathon is this like nebulous term out there that people still don't understand what it is. And, they think of hackathons and they think of sort of like, I don't even know what they think of, like engineers and tech geeks who are like hacking things. But, once you are able to work through that process in that way, you really do begin to understand it. And then to the point of doing it with health system leaders, they can then infuse that back into their institutions and support those bedside clinical nurses who want to do these things and who are doing these things at that level.
Yeah. And I think, what we're hearing from the national survey still around the nursing workforce is that nearly, 57% of nurses at the bedside are still feeling unheard, unseen. And the one way that you can really make people feel heard, or seen is when you run these events. And I think we talked to so many nurses who said, this event changed my life. It suddenly made me feel that I was capable of solving problems, being seen and heard, and that I had value. I know when I attended my first hackathon, that's what I came away with, was the knowledge that what I had experienced at the bedside was exactly the knowledge that needed to be shared with decision makers, because they often were solving a problem that was in this periphery of what the actual problem was. And I think we both, you and I, talked to a whole bunch of startups. I was just talking to one yesterday, Marion, and they had this, what they thought in theory was a really great solution, but in practice, the reality is that it could be really great in theory. There's a lot of academic exercises going on around how we fix the nursing workforce, what kind of solutions happen. But when you actually put it into practice, many of these solutions actually create more work for the nurse. They provide another task for a nurse to do, but not necessarily a tool to help them do their jobs better. And that is what the power of hackathons does. It sort of intersects theory with practice, with the real life knowledge and expertise of nurses to transform their environments and also the products that they're using to deliver better patient care.
Yeah, and it's bringing together all the people you need to be able to understand, not only understand the problem, right, but also to be able to create a functional solution that will then be able to be used in the environment where the problem's occurring. And if you don't have all of those stakeholders, if you don't have the nurses, but also if you don't have the engineers and designers and others, and even the hospital leadership on board, one piece of that is missing, it won't be implemented and it won't make the change that you're trying to create. And so I think, again, it's why these types of events are really important and why bringing together all of those players is necessary for the innovation process to be successful.
And we've talked a lot about in the past how nurses, women in general, have not largely been invested in. The issue that we're fighting for nursing to be designated as a STEM. We know that there's hackathons actually are well established in STEM professions to advance those professions forward, and also a significant amount of funding. Hackathons actually became the largest force factor within the environment of healthcare innovation that brought together innovators alongside investors to actually propel things forward. So for us to actually show an impact from the perspective of actually taking an idea to a solution to an actual adoption, the use of hackathons and bringing more nurses into that space is going to actually elevate the profession to a place that a lot of healthcare organizations have already been practicing, and that established pathway makes it very easy for us to actually follow directionally a movement that can further amplify and elevate the innovativeness of nurses in a way that can actually be translated into actionable events.
Yeah, it's so true. And we should say, because I don't think we said this, the Nurse Hack for Health, it was an in-person event prior to the pandemic. And since 2020, we've been doing virtual Nurse Hack for Health is Nurse Hack for Health events online. And these are free events that nurses from around the globe, nurses and others from around the globe can participate in. Our next official Nurse Hack for Health, that isn't the mini hack going on at the Think Conference in Boston, is actually going to be a pitchathon where teams of nurses and other interdisciplinary colleagues can pitch an idea for a chance to win up to $150,000 to implement that idea back at their institution. And so applications for that are open now, and they're due August 6th, and the pitch event will take place in October. So if you're a health system nurse and you have an idea and you have a team that you want to create a solution with, you can submit for this chance to win, again, up to $150,000 to create and implement your idea back at your institution. And if you get selected, you will go through our month-long accelerator program to help you really refine your idea and to work on your pitch. So we also have educational sessions around human-centered design thinking, how to pitch an idea, so that from my point of view and from all of our points of view, I think partly we want to provide funding and give people this opportunity, but we also want to educate nurses around these different things. And so that even whether you are able to participate or win the pitchathon, you've now gained these skills that you can use in other areas.
And Marion makes an excellent point. The truth is that funding is going to be very important. Most hospitals will not actually endorse things without some kind of funding. This was a force factor that we recognized to build into the Nurse Hack for Health. But also, one of the most important things is nursing school, we were never taught about business or strategy or finance or operations. And many times when nurses would actually make arguments around, I think, I feel, I believe that if we did something, this would result in a change, that would fall on deaf ears because we do not know how to determine the business direction. So what we've actually put together and what Marion has done a brilliant job on is teaching people how to actually understand the business case and behind a pitch so that your argument or your position or your solution actually hits what makes the business of healthcare tick and translates to the CEO, the CFO, the chief operating officer, who ultimately are going to be responsible for deciding if this idea moves forward. It is absolutely a fundamental shift that I know that many of us are fighting behind the scenes, which is to change nursing education to make it more holistic regarding the world of business. And these are examples of hackathons are one of those, we would argue, a mini MBA in the course of a weekend to teach you how to get ready to have that kind of transparency in translation.
For sure. And, I would be remiss if I did not say, going back to Nurse Hack for Health, and the Nurse Hack for Health is presented by SunCL, Johnson & Johnson, and Microsoft, and supported by All In Wellbeing for Healthcare and the Johnson & Johnson Foundation. So just want to thank them for their continued support of the Nurse Hack for Health and all of the things that we do as nurses. We have a lot of supporters on our side, and we appreciate all of their support. I'm going to run those across here.
Yeah, we would never have been able to do this stuff without their support. It's been a tremendous journey. We often joke that, some of these big corporations were actually the David to the Goliath of the mindset against nurses being innovators. And without Microsoft and J&J specifically putting their support behind this, I think we always wonder what would not have happened if these organizations hadn't stepped forward. So the great thing is the world of some of the most innovative companies in the world see the value of nurses innovating. They recognize the power of hackathons. And for now, we have been continuing consistently since 2019 to have these events. And the world, although it's not moving as fast as we would like it, right, Marion? We always say this. The reality is when we look backwards, we realize from one hackathon in 2016, the world for nursing is definitely changing and more people are adopting the idea that nurses should be innovating and doing hackathons.
Couldn't agree more, Rebecca.
Well, you guys, I think that's sort of a wrap for our conversation on hackathons. We hope that you participate in them. We encourage you not only to go to the ones that we love and support in the nursing world, but to find those other events where nurses are not present. Because what we've learned actually is many times when nurses cross that threshold, when they are the only one there, the world changes because finally they hear the nurse directionally, and their world and the respect that they have for the profession also is greatly impacted by the presence of a nurse in environments that we do not find them in typical hackathons.
Yeah, and if you're interested in learning more about hackathons, you want to do a hackathon at your institution, please reach out to us. We would be more than happy to try and assist. And of course, check out SunCL, the Society of Nurse Scientists, Innovators, Entrepreneurs, and Leaders. Tons of nurses there who are involved in hackathons and have really helped to lead the way in this area. So, go out there and innovate, everyone.
We'll see you guys next week.
Thanks for listening to the Love and Leary podcast. We hope this conversation sparked new ideas, challenged your thinking, and reminded you of the power nurses have to lead change.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share it. You can find more episodes and join the conversation wherever you do your podcast listening.